Imagine this. You wake up one morning, and for a fleeting moment before your eyes fully open, you exist in pure consciousness, no identity, no purpose, no story telling you who you are. Then reality floods back in. Your phone buzzes with notifications. Your calendar reminds you of obligations. The mirror reflects a face you're supposed to recognize as your own. But underneath it all, beneath the mechanical routines and rehearsed smiles, there's a question gnawing at you that you can't quite silence. Does any of this actually matter? Today, we will journey into one of the deepest and most unsettling questions of human existence. Why is nihilism taking over modern society? And more importantly, what did Nietzsche mean when he declared God is dead? What future did he see for humanity once our traditional foundations of meaning collapsed? Stay with me until the very end, because the last insight we will uncover is not only the most important of all, but it also has the power to reshape how you understand your life and the world around you. Before we dive in, take a moment to support this channel by subscribing, leaving a like, and sharing your thoughts in the comments. By doing so, you help spread ideas that awaken deeper reflection and growth. And I promise you this, throughout this video, you will encounter revelations that may change how you see yourself and the time we are living in. Now, let us begin. You push it down, of course. You have to. There are bills to pay, relationships to maintain, a career to build. Society has given you a script, and you've been reading your lines faithfully. Yet the question persists, growing louder in the quiet moments when you're alone at night, scrolling endlessly through other people's curated lives, or sitting in traffic wondering where all these people are rushing to, and why. What if everything you've been taught to pursue success, recognition, security, even happiness itself, is just an elaborate distraction from a truth too terrifying to face? This is not a crisis unique to you. It's the defining crisis of our age. Across cities and continents, millions feel it. A creeping hollowness that no amount of achievement, pleasure, or connection seems to fill. We live in the most materially abundant era in human history, yet depression, anxiety, and existential despair are at epidemic levels. We have more freedom than any generation before us, yet we feel more lost. We're more connected than ever through technology, yet more profoundly alone. How did we arrive at this paradox? How did a civilization that conquered disease, mapped the human genome, and sent probes beyond our solar system become unable to answer the simplest, most fundamental question a human being can ask? Why am I here? The uncomfortable truth is that we're living through exactly what Friedrich Nietzsche predicted over a century ago, the age of nihilism, the era when humanity would finally confront the abyss left behind by the collapse of its foundational myths. When Nietzsche declared, "God is dead," he wasn't celebrating or condemning. He was diagnosing. He saw that the structures that had given human existence, meaning for millennia, religion, tradition, absolute moral truths, were crumbling under the weight of modernity. And he knew with a prophet's clarity that we were utterly unprepared for what would follow. But here's what makes this moment so psychologically devastating. We don't just lack meaning. We lack the language to even articulate what we've lost. Previous generations inherited their purpose from the church, from their communities, from unquestioned traditions that told them who they were and why they mattered. They might have chafed against these constraints, but at least they had something solid to push against. We have nothing. We've been granted infinite freedom to define ourselves, and that freedom has become a prison. Because when everything is permitted, when all values are relative, when there's no grand narrative to situate yourself within, how do you choose? How do you know if your choices matter, or if you're just rearranging furniture in a burning house? Perhaps you've felt at that moment when success tastes like ashes, when achievements feel hollow, when you realize you've been climbing a ladder only to discover it's leaning against the wrong wall. Or worse, there is no wall at all, just infinite space, and you, suspended in it, grasping for something solid to hold on to. This is the vertigo of modern existence. This is the void Nietzsche saw opening beneath our feet. The question we must confront is not whether nihilism is taking over, it's whether we have the courage to understand why, and more crucially, whether we can transform this crisis into something that doesn't destroy us. Because Nietzsche didn't just predict the problem. He offered a solution so radical, so demanding, that most of us would rather remain in comfortable despair than face what it requires. What happens when the foundations crack? What fills the space where meaning used to live? The collapse didn't happen overnight. It was a slow erosion, so gradual that most people didn't notice the ground disappearing beneath them until they were already falling. For thousands of years, human beings lived within what psychologist Carl Jung called collective myths. Shared stories that explained suffering, justified sacrifice, and promised that your life, no matter how small or painful, was part of something larger, something sacred. These weren't just beliefs. They were psychological anchors, providing what Viktor Frankl would later identify as the most fundamental human need, a sense of why. But modernity shattered these anchors one by one. The Enlightenment brought reason, and with it, the death of superstition. Science explained what religion once mystified. The Industrial Revolution uprooted communities that had existed for centuries, replacing village bonds with urban anonymity. Darwin showed us we weren't divinely crafted but evolved from primordial mud. Freud revealed that even our thoughts weren't our own, but products of unconscious drives we couldn't control. Marx stripped away the divine justification for social hierarchies. Nietzsche saw all of this converging and recognized what others refused to admit. We had killed God, and with him, every absolute value that depended on his existence. This is what Nietzsche meant by God is dead, not that a deity ceased to exist, but that the cultural foundation of Western civilization, the shared belief in transcendent meaning, had crumbled. And here's the psychological devastation that followed. Without that foundation, everything built upon it became weightless. Morality became preference. Truth became perspective. Purpose became personal choice. We gained freedom, yes, but at the cost of certainty, belonging, and the comforting illusion that the universe cared whether we existed or not. Jung understood the psychological consequences with chilling precision. He warned that when collective myths die, individuals are thrown back entirely on themselves to generate meaning. But most people, he observed, aren't equipped for this burden. They need containers, religions, ideologies, traditions to give shape to their psychological energy. These weren't just beliefs. They were psychological anchors, providing what Viktor Frankl would later identify as the most fundamental human need, a sense of why. But modernity shattered these anchors one by one. The Enlightenment brought reason, and with it, the death of superstition. Science explained what religion once mystified. The Industrial Revolution uprooted communities that had existed for centuries, replacing village bonds with urban anonymity. Darwin showed us we weren't divinely crafted but evolved from primordial mud. Freud revealed that even our thoughts weren't our own, but products of unconscious drives we couldn't control. Marx stripped away the divine justification for social hierarchies. Nietzsche saw all of this converging and recognized what others refused to admit. We had killed God, and with him, every absolute value that depended on his existence. This is what Nietzsche meant by God is dead, not that a deity ceased to exist, but that the cultural foundation of Western civilization, the shared belief in transcendent meaning, had crumbled. And here's the psychological devastation that followed. Without that foundation, everything built upon it became weightless. Morality became preference. Truth became perspective. Purpose became personal choice. We gained freedom, yes, but at the cost of certainty, belonging, and the comforting illusion that the universe cared whether we existed or not. Jung understood the psychological consequences with chilling precision. He warned that when collective myths die, individuals are thrown back entirely on themselves to generate meaning. But most people, he observed, aren't equipped for this burden. They need containers, religions, ideologies, traditions to give shape to their psychological energy. Without these containers, that energy becomes chaotic, manifesting as neurosis, anxiety, and what he called the loss of soul. Modern society, Jung argued, is filled with people suffering from soul loss, wandering through life mechanically, disconnected from any sense of deeper purpose or authentic self. The existentialists saw this too. Jean-Paul Sartre declared that existence precedes essence. You're thrown into the world without inherent purpose, and the responsibility to create meaning falls entirely on you. This radical freedom, he acknowledged, produces anguish. Most people experience what he called bad faith. They flee from freedom into pre-packaged identities, societal roles, or mindless conformity, because the weight of authentic choice is unbearable. Arthur Schopenhauer went further, suggesting that beneath all our striving is a blind, meaningless will, an endless craving that can never be satisfied. Life, he argued, oscillates between suffering and boredom, and the only escape is to deny the will entirely. But perhaps Viktor Frankl captured the modern crisis most clearly. Surviving Nazi concentration camps, he observed that those who endured weren't necessarily the strongest or healthiest, they were those who retained a sense of meaning, a why, that made survival worthwhile. After the war, he noticed the same spiritual emptiness in affluent, peaceful societies that he'd seen in the camps. He called it the existential vacuum, the feeling that life, despite all its comforts and freedoms, is fundamentally hollow. This vacuum, he warned, is the breeding ground for addiction, aggression, and depression. And this is where we are now, floating in that vacuum, surrounded by everything yet grasping at nothing. But why does this emptiness feel so inescapable? What invisible forces keep us trapped? Look around you. Really look. What do you see? A world in perpetual motion, people rushing, consuming, posting, streaming, working, hustling. Everyone appears busy. Yet if you could peer beneath the surface, you'd find something unsettling. Most are running not towards something, but away from something. Away from silence. Away from stillness. Away from the terrifying question that emerges the moment they stop moving. What is this all for? This is nihilism's most insidious manifestation. It doesn't announce itself with despair or darkness. It hides behind productivity, entertainment, and the cult of perpetual distraction. We've built an entire civilization designed to prevent us from confronting the void. Social media offers endless scrolling, an infinite feed that ensures you never reach the bottom, never arrive at that uncomfortable moment of, now what? Streaming platforms autoplay the next episode before you can decide if you even want to keep watching. Dating apps gamify human connection, reducing intimacy to swipes and dopamine hits. Work culture glorifies the grind, equating busyness with worthiness, so you never have to ask if what you're grinding toward actually matters. This is what psychologists call experiential avoidance, the desperate attempt to escape uncomfortable internal states by filling every moment with external stimulation. But here's the neurological trap. The more you avoid the void, the larger it grows. Your brain's reward system, shaped by evolution to seek meaning and purpose, begins to malfunction when fed only empty calories of distraction. The nucleus accumbens your brain's anticipation center, becomes desensitized, requiring ever greater stimulation to feel anything at all. You need louder music, more extreme content, bigger achievements, just to feel a fraction of what simple pleasures once provided. This is the hedonic treadmill accelerating into nihilistic territory. Cultural conditioning reinforces this trap at every level. From childhood, you're taught that meaning comes from external validation. Good grades, prestigious colleges, impressive careers, enviable lifestyles. But these are all comparative metrics, requiring you to measure yourself against others. Social comparison, neuroscience shows, activates the same brain regions involved in physical pain. You're literally hurting yourself by participating in this game. Yet you can't stop because society offers no alternative framework for mattering. The entire system runs on what philosopher René Girard called mimetic desire. We want things not because they fulfill us, but because others want them. We're trapped in an endless cycle of chasing borrowed dreams, wondering why achievement feels so empty. The consequences ripple outward in ways we rarely connect. Political polarization intensifies because when people lack transcendent meaning, they pour their need for purpose into tribal identities and ideological warfare. Conspiracy theories flourish because they offer the illusion of hidden order, a grand narrative that makes you feel significant, even if that significance comes from being one of the awakened few. Rates of addiction to substances, pornography, gambling, shopping skyrocket because these provide temporary relief from the existential vacuum, even as they deepen it. Relationships fracture because we approach them with consumer mentality, always wondering if there's someone better, some perfect partner who will finally fill the hole inside us that no human being could ever fill. Perhaps most tragic is how this affects identity itself. When you lack an internal compass, you become whatever your environment rewards. You shapeshift, through personas, the professional self, the social media self, the family self, until you no longer know which one, if any, is real. This fragmentation is what Jung warned against. The dissolution of the self into mere masks, with no authentic core beneath them. But there's something even more disturbing lurking beneath these symptoms. What if the real trap isn't the void itself, but how we've been taught to respond to it? Here's the radical truth that changes everything. You've been lied to about the nature of the problem. Society tells you that meaninglessness is the enemy, that the void must be filled, that you need to find your purpose as if it's a hidden treasure waiting to be discovered. But Nietzsche saw through this delusion. The void isn't the problem. Your relationship to the void is. What if I told you that the most liberated human beings throughout history didn't escape the absurdity of existence, they embraced it. They didn't find meaning. They created it, knowing full well it was their own creation. This is the rebellion Nietzsche called for, not the desperate search for cosmic significance, but the courageous act of becoming the author of your own values in a universe that provides none. Consider the Stoic philosophers who faced this same crisis 2,000 years ago. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the world, wrote in his private journals, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." He wasn't being morbid. He was practicing what Nietzsche would later echo the art of living, as if every moment was chosen, not merely endured. The Stoics understood that meaning isn't found in the external world, but forged in how you respond to circumstances beyond your control. They transformed fate into choice, obstacles into opportunities, suffering into strength. But Nietzsche pushed even further. He introduced the concept of amor fati, the love of one's fate. Not passive acceptance, but active affirmation. Imagine embracing your life so completely that you would willingly live it exactly as it is, again and again for eternity. Every humiliation, every heartbreak, every failure accepted not despite the pain, but because that pain shaped you into who you are. This isn't toxic positivity or spiritual bypassing. It's the ultimate act of psychological sovereignty, refusing to be a victim of circumstances, and instead declaring, "This is my life, and I say yes to all of it." The practical application of this is revolutionary. It means you stop waiting for permission to live authentically. You stop deferring your real life until some future moment when conditions are perfect. You stop measuring your worth by metrics designed by others. Instead, you ask, what would I do if I truly believed my choices mattered, not to the universe, but to me? This question strips away the borrowed desires, the shoulds and musts, revealing what philosopher Søren Kierkegaard called the self one truly is. History provides powerful examples. Viktor Frankl, facing the ultimate meaninglessness of the concentration camps, chose to find purpose in bearing witness, in maintaining dignity, in helping others. He didn't discover this meaning. He created it from nothing, in the darkest possible circumstances. The artist Vincent van Gogh painted masterpieces that the world rejected, died in poverty and obscurity, yet poured his entire being into his work because the act of creation itself was his meaning. He didn't paint to be understood. He painted because not painting would have been a denial of his authentic self. This is the shift. From seeking external validation to internal authenticity. From finding meaning to making meaning. From asking, "What does life want from me?" to declaring, "This is what I want from life." It requires something most people find terrifying: taking full responsibility for who you become. No more blaming circumstances, society, your past, or your limitations. You are the sculptor, and your life is the raw material. But even this isn't the deepest level. There's one final insight, one ultimate realization that transcends even the creation of meaning. Are you ready to see it? Picture yourself standing at the edge of a vast ocean. The waves stretch endlessly before you. The horizon dissolves into infinity, and you realize there is no map, no compass, no guarantee of where these waters will carry you. This is the condition of human existence once the old certainties collapse. And it was here, at the edge of this abyss, that Nietzsche offered his most radical and transformative idea, one so powerful that it has the potential to fundamentally alter not just how you think about your life, but how you experience every single moment of existence. The concept is called eternal recurrence, and it begins with a thought experiment that sounds like a nightmare. What if you had to live your life exactly as it is, over and over again, for all eternity? Every joy, every mundane Tuesday, every triumph, every crushing disappointment, every moment of connection, and every moment of loneliness, repeated infinitely, unchangeably, without the possibility of alteration or escape. The same mistakes, the same regrets, the same perfect moments, forever. Your first reaction might be horror. Who would want to relive every failure, every embarrassment, every loss, without reprieve? But that visceral response reveals something crucial. It shows you exactly how you feel about the life you're actually living right now. If the thought of eternal recurrence fills you with dread, it's because you're living in a way that even you cannot fully affirm. You're enduring life rather than embracing it. You're waiting for it to become something other than what it is. But Nietzsche didn't present eternal recurrence as punishment or prediction. He offered it as the ultimate test of life affirmation. Could you live in such a way that you would willingly, joyfully choose to repeat your existence exactly as it unfolds? Not because it's perfect, but because you've made it wholly yours. Every choice, every response to circumstances beyond your control, every moment of courage in the face of meaninglessness. To embrace eternal recurrence is to achieve what Nietzsche considered the highest possible state, complete amor fati, absolute love of one's fate. Think about what this means psychologically. Most people live in a constant state of resistance, wishing the past had been different, anxious that the future won't measure up, dissatisfied with the present moment. This resistance is the source of immeasurable suffering. It fractures you across time, scattered between regret and worry, never fully inhabiting the only moment that actually exists. Now, the eternal recurrence shatters this fragmentation. If this moment will return infinitely, if your response to this very circumstance will echo through eternity, suddenly there's no future moment to wait for, no past to rectify. There is only this, and the question becomes, can you say yes to it? This is where the ultimate paradigm shift occurs. You realize that the search for meaning was itself the trap. Meaning isn't something the universe owes you. It isn't a treasure to be found, or a truth to be discovered. Meaning is the story you tell about your experience, the values you choose to embody, the way you shape chaos into something you can call your own. And here's the liberation hidden in that realization. If you are the creator of meaning, then you are also free from the tyranny of cosmic significance. You don't need the universe to validate your choices for them to matter. You don't need an afterlife for this life to be worthwhile. You don't need a grand narrative that situates your suffering within divine purpose. You need only this, the courage to affirm your existence so completely that you would choose it again, knowing full well that it will bring pain alongside joy, failure alongside success, loss alongside love. Modern psychology has begun to recognize what Nietzsche intuited. Research on post-traumatic growth shows that people who endure profound suffering often emerge not despite their trauma, but transformed by how they chose to integrate it. They didn't find meaning in the suffering itself, they created meaning through their response to it. Studies on mortality salience demonstrate that when people deeply confront their own finitude, they often experience radical shifts in values, prioritizing authenticity and connection over status and accumulation. Neuroplasticity research reveals that you are literally reshaping your brain with every choice, every thought pattern, every repeated behavior. You are the sculptor of your own consciousness. But eternal recurrence asks something even more demanding than creating meaning. It asks, can you love the process itself? Can you embrace life not as a problem to be solved, but as a work of art perpetually unfolding? Can you dance in the chaos rather than demanding order? Can you say yes, not just to the beautiful moments, but to the necessary suffering that carves depth into your character? This is Nietzsche's ultimate answer to nihilism. Not denial, not escape, but radical, unconditional affirmation. The rise of nihilism isn't humanity's downfall, it's our evolutionary pressure, forcing us to become something more than passive recipients of inherited meaning. We are being pushed to become artists of existence, philosophers of our own lives, creators rather than mere creatures. So I leave you with the question that should haunt and inspire you. If tonight, as you drift toward sleep, a voice whispered that you must live this exact life again and again for eternity, Would you rejoice or would you despair? Your honest answer reveals everything about how fully you're living right now. And more importantly, what would you change, starting tomorrow, to live in such a way that you could joyfully embrace the eternal return of every moment? The spread of nihilism is not the end of meaning. It's the beginning of a new era of human possibility, one where we stop searching for purpose in the stars and start forging it in the furnace of our own becoming. Nietzsche's vision reminds us of something timeless. Life has the meaning we dare to give it. And when we say yes to existence fully, without reservation or escape, we don't just survive the void, we transform it into the canvas upon which we paint our defiance, our creativity, our utterly human refusal to be defeated by meaninglessness. This is the rebellion. This is the way forward. Not around the abyss, but through it, emerging on the other side as the authors of our own salvation.